Okay, welcome to your first lesson here in CP Stats. We're going to start out with some basic vocabulary that you're going to need to know throughout the year. This is probably going to be one of the most important lessons, so make sure you're taking notes. Make sure if questions come up, you're taking them down. You can always reach out to me. So the first thing we're going to start out with is what is this class and what are we going to be learning? Good question. You signed up for statistics. Chances are you don't know what statistics are or what you're going to be doing. So what is this class? Here's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be learning basically four big key components here. First thing you're going to learn is how to collect data. And first of all, you got to figure out who are you going to ask? That's important. You got to figure out, okay, how to collect data. Who are we asking to get this data from? Once you get that data, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how to analyze that data. What are you going to do with it? You're going to look at it. You're going to be able to summarize it. You're going to be looking for characteristics. That'll help you make some conclusions. So you're going to analyze the data. And then you're going to make a conclusion. Those are the three big things. You're also going to be learning a bit about probability. That's going to be the fourth thing here. And what that is that's the likelihood of something happening. We're going to be getting the probability a bit more. We're going to be going pretty deep into that. I want to say maybe around like January. But basically what you want to know is probability is the likelihood of something happening. So those are the big four things you're going to be learning in here. How to collect data, who are we asking, how to analyze that data, how you're going to do it to make a conclusion, and you're also going to be learning about the chances of things happening. How likely is something to happen? Where do we start? So we're going to start out with some very basic principles here, some very basic vocabulary. What you're going to start with is a population of interest. Sometimes you might just see it referred to as a population. What does that mean? Ultimately, a population of interest is who do you want to know about? So chances are you have some sort of question, and who or what do you want to know about? This could extend to maybe you want to find out the proportion of Grafton High School students with brown eyes. Maybe you want to find the proportion of Grafton residents who own iPhones. Maybe you want to find the proportion of all Massachusetts residents who still have a grandparent. Something like that. Anything regarding that where you're looking at either something big or maybe something small. So you want a population of interest. Who do you want to know about? And you also want to figure, is it a large or small group? That's going to be really important as we do this. I want to figure out, is it going to be a large or small group? Are you looking to find something out about a group that's really big, where you can't ask everybody? Or maybe it's a small group where you can ask everybody. Like if you're trying to figure out, okay, what kind of pizza, what's the favorite type of pizza for my class here? That's easy. You can ask everybody in class. That's a small group. Or maybe you want to ask your family, what percent of people in your family are going to be voting? Easy. You can ask them pretty easily. However, if you're looking at a really large group, that's not as easy to do, and that's where statistics come in. So then you've got some definitions here, census versus sample, and when you collect data. So we'll start with the census. A census is when you ask everybody or get data about everything. So as an example, say you're curious about Grafton High School, like students at Grafton High School, GHS students. A census would be ask everyone. That's a census. Or say you want to know what percentage of iPhones have a gaming app. A lot of iPhones, right? All iPhone users? Ask everyone. Could even be something small like members of your family. Same thing, ask everyone. Or with iPhones, maybe you're just looking at iPhones in general, you check every iPhone. Census is when you get information from every single individual. Now, often it's not easy to do that. Like say we wanted to find out something about Grafton High School students. It's going to be very difficult to ask every single Grafton High School student a question. Hard to track everyone down. Even if you thought you had an entire school day to do it, say there are kids at home, maybe they're homesick or whatever. It's not easy to get information from everybody. If you can't get information from everybody, that's when we do what's called a sample. And that's really important in statistics. So I'm going to write down sample in blue here. A sample is a small subgroup of your population. So maybe you want to find out something about all of Grafton High School. Maybe you don't ask all the Grafton High School students. You ask a small group of them. That's a sample. Now, we're going to be learning about all sorts of types of samples. For right now, what we want to know, samples, we want them to be random. We're going to go over what random looks like. Maybe not today, but you're going to be doing activities later down the road where you're going to be doing things randomly. Randomness is incredibly important when it comes to statistics. You want to do things randomly. So if you're doing something regarding Grafton High School students, then what you want to do is you want to randomly select a certain group of them. You don't want to just go with like the first 10 you see or the first 20 you see or necessarily just go with the first classroom you see. That's not good. You want to do it randomly. What you're going to find in statistics is if you do it randomly and you get some sort of summary, that more often than not, you're going to get something that's really close to telling you about your entire population, which is really cool because you're able to do something with a lot less work with a sample than if you did a census, or if you have to ask everybody. And what are you collecting when you do either a census or a sample? You're collecting data. And what data is it's individual pieces of information from each individual. Notice the key word here is individual. It's like every little piece of information, right? So if you wanted to find like the average height of someone at Grafton High School, right? You do a sample. You randomly select 30 kids. All the heights you record from those 30 kids, that's data. All the individual pieces, all those individual heights, that's data. If you're trying to find out the favorite pizza topping for your entire class here, again, you can do it with the census or a sample. In that case, that's a census, but still, you ask everybody in class, what's your favorite pizza topping? Everything that they offer you, every pizza topping that they say, that's data. So again, census, you ask everybody. If it's a small group, censuses are a good way of going about it. However, if you got a large group, not so easy to do, that's when you go with a sample. That's a small subgroup of your population. And again, you're going to learn how to create a good sample, but what you want to know right now is you want it to be random. And whether you're doing a census or a sample, you're collecting pieces of information, and that is called data. Okay? Now we're going to scroll down a little bit. Now we got two other words here, parameter versus statistic. So you gather all this information, right? Say you do a census. You figure out, okay, all the pizza toppings of everyone in the class. You get all that information. All right, so a certain number of kids like pepperoni, certain number of kids like anchovies. Some kids don't like any toppings at all. Now, you want to summarize it. Maybe you want to say the favorite pizza topping of everyone in class, you find that most people like pepperoni. That is a parameter. A parameter is, I'm going to do this in red again, color coding my stuff here. You can do that too. A parameter is a summary of your census / population. Your whole population. I'm going to put whole population here. So parameter is a summary of your whole population if you do that census, right? Now, what does the summary look like? It can look like a lot of different things, but chances are you've heard these terms before and you're going to learn a bit more about them. But a summary could be, it could be an average or a mean, as we like to call it in here. It could be a median, which is the central number, like the center data when you put it all in numerical order. That's if it's quantitative data. Maybe it could be, let's see, the range. Any sort of summary about an entire population after you do a census is called a parameter. Now a statistic, what this whole class is built on, right? This whole class is basically built on the assumption that you can't do a census for some reason. You're going to find that happens a lot. It happens a lot during elections. They're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to vote for who? They can't ask everyone who votes, so they do a sample and then they come up with some numbers, right? That's a statistic. A statistic summarizes a sample. Statistic, it's a summary of a sample. So they're not that different here, a parameter and a statistic. The only difference is the parameter summarizes a census, a statistic summarizes a sample. And again, it could be an average or a mean. We're going to use mean more often in here, but this is just to get you started. Median, range, and I even forgot mode. Maybe you learned that back in middle school. Mean, median, mode. That's the thing, that's the value or piece of data that comes up most often, whether it's a census or a sample. That's the mode. But you don't necessarily need to know that right now. All you need to know is the difference here. Statistic, that's a summary of a sample, and the parameter summarizes a census. So those are some key pieces of vocabulary you're going to be using in here all year. That stuff's going to be pretty important. So take your time. Make sure you really spend some time understanding these words because they're going to be used a lot, and vocabulary is so important. Let's scroll down here. All right, so we have some information here. We're going to determine whether we want to do a census of the sample. So right here we have a proportion of Grafton High School students with blue eyes. You want to figure out the proportion of all Grafton High School students with blue eyes. As we established, asking that many people something, that's really difficult. Doing a census is really difficult. It might take you a lot of time. Sometimes it could cost you a lot of money. So if it's really time consuming, you don't have the time to do it, guess what? You don't want to do a census. You would want to do a sample. This would be a great example of doing a sample. So what would you do in this case? I'd probably randomly select like maybe, 50 students, figure out their eye color, I get a proportion, and then you're going to learn how you can use that proportion and generalize it to the entire school. You're going to learn that in this course. It's pretty cool. And that's how they do so much here. That's how they do so much when it comes to advertising, when it comes to elections. So much of your life is built on statistics. You're going to learn about that as we go through this. Now, say we wanted to find out the proportion of period 4 stat students with blue eyes. That's not difficult. We can reach out to everyone in class. It's not a big class. So we got maybe 17 kids, maybe even 24, say it's a big number. Still, 24 is not that much. In this case, I probably would go with the census. Why? Because it's a lot easier. Census, you can ask everybody. That's important. So if you can ask everybody, you do a census. If you can't ask everybody, you do a sample. Now, I don't have any questions here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of sum it up here in one general statement. And this is a good statement to rely on. Because you might be asked down the road to be able to, differentiate between a census and a sample, tell me the difference between a parameter and a statistic, and tell me when would be appropriate to use each. So I'm going to write a sentence here. I recommend you write the same thing. I wanted to know something about my population. The population was too big to do a census. I'm just going to move this stuff, gotta love notability. It's too big to do a census, so I performed a sample. From my sample, I got data, which I summarized as a statistic. What you have here is basically the important stuff about statistics. This sentence alone really helps you get into what it is. This up one more time. Keep dropping my headphones here. And then I used my statistic to make an inference. Now, it's just a fancy way of saying a conclusion about my population. So the key vocab you really want to know in here, population. Well, I think I'm going to go with a different color even, with something a lot lighter, a bit thicker too. Cool. You want to know something about your population? No, census, sample, statistic, and inference. Those are these key pieces here. I don't think I threw data. Oh, I did throw data in there, so I'm going to use that too. This is a great vocabulary statement to kind of summarize what this course is all about. It uses all this introductory vocab we just talked about. Now, you're going to be doing some work with this introductory vocabulary. You're going to be answering some questions, and even have a little bit of an activity about statistical questions. So, best of luck with it. You know, if you have questions, you can always reach out to me, and this will get you started. Good luck.